Welcome to our fifth Unpack webinar on solar PV and batteries. My name is Jane Simpson. I'm the Training and Events Coordinator for Zero Carbon Cumbria, part of Futureproof Cumbria. I'll be starting and finishing the webinar this evening. And just to point out, this webinar is for householders and our focus is to provide simple information on solar PV and batteries with an opportunity for you to ask questions. I'd like to say a great big thanks to our speakers this evening, who Julia's going to introduce you to, and I'll hand over to Julia. Julia Massey is one of our project managers in Futureproof Cumbria, and she's going to kick us off and introduce us to the rest of our speakers. So next slide, please, Robin. Thank you very much. Over to you, Julia.
Hey, thank you very much, Jane, and lovely to sort of like meet you all online, if only by name, but not by camera, but it's good to be here. So I'm Julia Massey. I'm a project manager in our homes team, and Claire Taylor, who is a project officer in our team, is also here this evening and is going to be sharing a lived experience of living with solar panels, EV charger and heat pump, but in particular about solar panels, to give you an insight into what it's like. I'd also like to welcome two of our local vetted MCS accredited installers, Keir Marsden from Glow Solar and Stuart Richardson from Create Energy, both based down in the South Lakes, but do installations all over Cumbria. And we've been working with both of them over the last 2.5 years, since about the beginning of 2023. So thank you for being here to answer questions as we go through. If you'd like to go to the next slide, Robin, that would be great. Thank you. So I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of who Futureproof Cumbria is, because we've recently rebranded and you may not know about the rebranding. Take you through some of the basics of social financials. We'll move on to Claire giving a case study about her lived experience with solar panels, and then we'll move through to Q&A with our installers. But do please, and I know Ian's already put a question in the Q&A, what Keir is already doing is typing an answer. We've done this before, so thank you, Keir. Whilst I'm talking, if you've got questions, we'll try and answer them as we go along, and anything that we haven't answered, we'll pick up after a little bit. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for those of you who may not know much about Futureproof Cumbria, we used to be called Cumbria Action for Sustainability, and on April the 2nd, we've rebranded to bring us to a sort of a new life. Same mission, same purpose, to help people, communities and organisations tackle climate crisis in a very tangible way. So our vision hasn't changed, but we wanted to bring a fresh meaning to our branding, and Futureproof Cumbria is our new branding, and the team that I work within is the Homes team. Thank you. Next slide. Couple of landmarks that I want to acknowledge. Very recently, at the end of last year, there was a report acknowledged and to say that it was 2024 was the first year in which UK, when more power was generated by wind, solar and hydro renewables than fossil fuels and with imports. So that was quite a landmark for the UK. And literally just a few weeks ago, we've been doing a lot of lobbying, as have many MPs across the country, in particular the Green Party. But the UK government announced a solar mandate for new homes that will be built in England from 2027. They will be built with solar panels as part of a new build mandate. In reality, that means that about 80% of homes who've got roofs that are in right position will have solar from 2027. So great landmarks. Thank you, Robin. In terms of the solar PV support that we're able to provide through Futureproof Cumbria, we've had funding from the Energy Industry Voluntary Redress Scheme, which is basically the Energy Savings Trust, since the start of 2023 To do a number of things. One, to educate, inspire, and encourage people to understand what solar is all about and to help you progress on your journey to solar PV for domestic homes. We provide free independent advice, and we have events, webinars, in-person events. We've got an event coming up in Kendal on the 10th of July. We've got frequently asked questions that we have on our website. We can give access to maps to see if your home is suitable before you even sign up and look at a property questionnaire to get quotes. And we can provide support throughout your customer journey. So it's not just about today, it's all the way through, from quotes through to the visits from the installers through to installation and beyond. Just to make sure you're aware, there is absolutely no contractual relationship between us and the local vetted installers. What we've been tasked to do is to work with MCS accredited installers to develop that ecosystem at a Cumbrian level with installers that are working to a quality standard that we are confident with and a financial due diligence. But there is no financial arrangement between us and the 4 installers that we work with. And as I say, we can support any Cumbrian household. That's our main priority. But we can also support community venues and small businesses as well. Thank you, Robin. So how does it work? Very simply, we have a property questionnaire on our website, and we can also send it to you in Word doc format. It takes about 30 minutes to fill in, and that questionnaire asks you questions about your property and your priorities and your preferences, whether you're looking at perhaps on roof, ground, maybe you're off grid. It asks about other renewable energy sources that you might be interested in, whether it's heat pumps or EV charging points. And we ask for an aerial shot. So this information we check and then we send on to our installers after we've answered or clarified any questions. And then 2 of our installers will send you quotes. Quite often it's desk-based research. They're good at their jobs. They know what they're doing. They've done every installation from grade 2 listed buildings to wiggly line roofs, taking roofs off, new builds, you name it, whatever. So we tend to work on a desk-based quote in the first instance. But then as you go through the process, if you're interested to work with one of our installers or have them out to visit your site, then that's what we can support. You're not obliged to go with one or other. You can get a third quote from somebody completely different, but we're there to keep in touch with you and support you throughout. And I think what we pride ourselves on and the feedback we get from customers is, in particular with Claire's support, there are often those niggly questions that you just want somebody independent to answer. And we've even gone as far as introducing with consent to somebody who's had the same installer who you want to get a vote of confidence and just want to have a chat with. We'll make sure you get the slides so you've got all the details, and we'll move on to the next slide. So just to give you an idea and a confidence level of who we've been working with over the last 2 years since the beginning of 23, we've had 17 community events, and those have been online as well as in person, attended by just under 600 households. So it's been great to inspire and educate, and not everybody wants to move forward because they're still making decisions or saving up or just want to explore what does it mean to have solar. But out of those 580 households, roughly just under 50% have requested quotes for batteries and for panels, and then just under 30% have actually completed installations. So it just gives you a level of understanding of who we've worked with and the volume that we've worked with. Thank you. Next slide. One of the tools that we've been playing with recently is a non-for-profit organisation that's based down in the West Country, have now set up an online platform called Solar Wizard, where you can plug in your postcode, and subject to your house being available on the algorithms, the LIDAR data and ONS, it will then give you an estimate. It's quite a fun tool to use, and it will give you an estimate of the number of panels, the potential renewable energy that can be sourced from those panels, and it will give you an estimated cost. Claire and I have done a bit of research against actual installations that we've done with our installers. And the caveat we would give to you is that whilst the number of panels and the estimated renewable energy is pretty bob on, give or take 10%, the cost estimates they give you are way inflated. We're not sure what they're basing them on. We suspect it's basing them on, I don't know, London prices, West Country prices, but they are way inflated. So please be aware that if you do go on that, the prices are way out. But it's a useful tool to use, and do have a play with that. Not every property is on there, but do have a play. Thank you. Next slide. Just to let you know, before you bob in and jump into solar, we do have other support, and we always say, are there other energy efficiencies that you could look at with your property? So if you take us to the next slide, we've got 3 services. The first 2 are free. And we have webinars available as well that you can watch online. So free home energy support. Every household in Cumbria is entitled, we're funded to offer a 15-minute home energy advice call. Basic stuff, but useful information and website information that we can signpost you to. And subject to eligibility, which we will send to you, you could be eligible for a 90-minute home visit by a qualified home energy advisor. So that won't give you the detail around solar, but it will give you useful tips and techniques about smart meters, how you're using your water, your heating, some free draft proofing equipment if you're eligible, LED light bulbs and various other bits and bats. In the winter months, we also do free basic thermal imaging service, which is in partnership with volunteers from community groups. And then we do have a paid for home retrofit service, which provides a room by room home energy house audit by technical experts. And this provides a long report on retrofit options, which could include solar, and follow-up consultation. And if you're interested in any of these, we'll make sure you get the links after the event. Thank you. And of course, there are grants available. Again, that's minuscule writing. We'll make sure you get the slide. They do change invariably. Some are means tested, some are not means tested. You will see solar panels on there. And we're currently supporting a household in the South Lakes who had a free home energy visit and a free home thermal imaging visit. We identified some cold spots. They were eligible for Eco4 grants, and we're currently supporting them to get solar panels and new home energy electric heat storage panels for their home. But we'll make sure you get the grants. And when it comes to that, not everybody is eligible for grants, but where you are eligible, we'll make sure that we make you aware of that. Thank you. Next slide. So on to some solar PV basics. And apologies, I didn't get the results. So I don't know whether I'm talking to an audience that has diddly squat knowledge. I'm guessing I'm talking to an audience that has probably done a bit of their own research and probably knows a little bit about solar PV. But in a nutshell, the installers that we work with are absolute experts in everything that you can do with solar PV. So that might be on-roof panels, where they sit just above your roof panels, and they come with bird safeguarding panels around them. They also do in-roof panels. So instead of your tiles where your panels sit on top, you take the tiles off for new builds or old builds, and the panels act as the tiles as well as the solar PV panels. Of course, you've got ground level panels if you've got an area of space, and we've done a few of those. We've done barns And we've even done off-grid panels with our installers as well. And with the panels comes some kit, which can be in your garage or in a room or in a little cabin outside your house, an inverter and batteries. And if we go to the next slide, a lot of people ask about the capital costs. In terms of Futureproof Cumbria, we're interested in the carbon savings and the fact that you're generating renewable energy, but a lot of people obviously ask about the capital costs. So what we've been doing over the last 2 years is benchmarking the costs that our local installers are installing panels at. So these are all subject to the additional work that might need to take place if you need additional scaffolding or if there are some roof accessibility issues or if you need some upgrades to your electrics or the roof. However, roughly speaking, 12 panels, which could, depending on the size of the panels and their power, could generate between 3,500 to 4,500 kilowatts, which is roughly speaking what a 4-bedroomed house, 4 people in the household would want. And it roughly costs for the solar panels and a battery around 10 to 12,000 pounds. But that does depend on the specifics of your house, but that gives you an idea. So if we go to the next slide. In terms of payback periods, sorry, I'm just watching some of the questions coming in and the chat function. In terms of recouping your capital cost, it all depends on how much you're generating in terms of electricity, what your self-consumption is, how much you're paying for the energy that you might need but don't generate, or how much you can sell it back to the grid for. But roughly speaking, again, we tend to talk about a 10-year payback. However, Stuart and I were talking earlier, and we were talking about for small businesses, that payback period, in terms of if you're using a lot of electricity, can come down significantly. So we were talking about a 5-year payback period. But it all depends on how much you're using, how much you're having to pay for what you need if you don't generate it, and how much you're getting for selling it back onto the grid. But the system that these guys design, they'll give you an estimation, but obviously there are things that are out of our control, but roughly speaking, a 10-year payback. Next slide, please. In terms of the electricity that you generate, and Claire's going to give a lived experience of her very adaptable south-facing roof, but not everybody has a purely south-facing roof. But it does depend on the size, the number of panels that you can get, the power that's generated by the panels, and obviously the amount of light that falls on your panels, whether it's an east, west, south facing. Don't do it if you've got north facing, and it also depends on whether you've got trees around you. So that all takes into consideration when you get quotes for your system design. Next slide, please. And in terms of your self-consumption, we talk about with batteries and without batteries. We appreciate that batteries, they used to be with an installation, they're still VAT-free. As of April last year, you can add batteries to your system at any point and they're VAT-free, which is useful because they can be a significant cost. But without batteries, we tend to say that your self-consumption from the electricity you generate through the solar is around 30% of what you need, and then the rest is exported to the grid. If you have a battery, obviously you can download and store for days when your renewable energy is less. So you tend to keep 60% and then obviously sell back what you don't need back to the grid. And we'll send you that slide of a typical sort of annual peaks and troughs of when the sun is shining and when you generate renewable energy, when you store it and when you sell it back to the grid. Next slide, please. So you can increase your self-consumption, and I know Claire is going to demonstrate how you do this by being a bit savvy with when you use your equipment in your house that's using electricity. So obviously when you're generating solar from a nice sunny day, that's when you want to be, if you've got a dishwasher or if you've got a washing machine, that's when you want to put them on so that they're using the energy that you're generating. And obviously you can combine things. So Claire's going to be talking about her heat pump, her EV charger, some people going down the route of using heat storage and generating water through new ways of electrical heating of your waters. So there are lots of things that you can do that will impact on your self-consumption. Thank you, Robin. And then I know, again, Claire's going to touch on this in terms of tariffs. Gone are the days of feed-in tariffs. If you're still on a feed-in tariff, and we had a gentleman come to our Carlisle event the other day, still getting 70p per kilowatt. Wouldn't that be great? Gone are those days. The best are around 34p, which is through Octopus, through a particular tariff and a particular battery. So not everybody is eligible. But if you go online and take a look at the web link that we've provided, they oscillate between sort of 5 to 15p kilowatt. But OVO are doing some good ones, Good Energy, E.ON are coming back with some good deals. But do look at suppliers, and it tends to be your best options are where your supplier of energy is also who you're selling it back to. That's where you tend to get the best income from what you're selling back to the grid. So that's a whistle-stop tour. Next slide, please, Robin. And I'm going to leave you with a quote before I hand over to Claire, and we'll take a look at some of the questions that have come in. This is from somebody who had their installation last year and were commenting on grey days in Cumbria in November 2024. And you'll see there that even on grey days in November, they were absolutely delighted when they were able to generate sufficient electricity to be self-sufficient for 3 days of the week in November, and 50% of their requirement on the other 3 days. So even on a gloomy day in Cumbria, solar PV panels can generate renewable energy. I'm going to have a quick look at the Q&A and thank you guys for asking some of the questions. And thank you, everybody. Jane, for keeping an eye. I'm going to hand over to Claire to give us a whistle-stop tour of her lived experience with solar panels. Over to you, Claire.
Thanks so much, Julia and Jane and everyone who's joined us this evening, along with our fantastic installers. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about my own experience as a householder owning a solar PV array with batteries in a very energy efficient home. I will be talking about kind of key questions really when you're thinking about quotes and the kind of system that you're looking for. So big question is, how much energy can you generate? How much energy can your system generate given the constraints of your household, the position of your home, the obstructions, any shading, etc., the size of your roof or the ground. You probably also are thinking about things like, once you've got that energy, how can you best use it? Do you want to use as much of it, or might you be wanting to take advantage of smart tariffs to export some of your energy back? And invariably, you will be exporting quite a lot of your energy back. So the costs vary for how much you can be paid. So how much can you save as well? I'll be looking into that, how much you can save on your bills, how much I've saved so far. And then just closing with some tips, really, perhaps things that I hadn't considered from the outset that you might want to think about, and just a few closing comments. So just thought I would run through what I'm going to share with you. So next slide, please. Great. So an overview, first of all, of our house. It's a semi-detached, brand new from 2021 house in a rural estate. And these properties it's a small estate, and they were all built with an air source heat pump and maximum insulation. My home, I think if it's not A rated, then it's B on an EPC. So it was really, really good. And it's all electric. So that's quite important thing to consider in terms of why we wanted solar, because not only is it a really good green thing to do, but it's also a great way of being able to power our home, given that we are so reliant entirely on electricity. So that's the heat pump there that you can see on the right-hand side. It's appearing on my right-hand side. As Julia mentioned, in addition to the heat pump that we have, which, by the way, powers all our hot water and heating, we also have an EV charge point and, of course, an EV. So, again, we use the solar for absolutely everything, for the heat pump, for the EV, and for all our appliances and devices and lighting. There's just 2 of us in the house. We're 2 adults. And also got a new dog, although that's kind of ancillary info, given that he doesn't really require too much of our electricity. Yeah, so all of that kind of maybe would add up to bigger than average electric bills for a 2-person semi-detached working from home household. Next slide, please. So with that kind of said, with that introduction to our home, this is a picture on the left side of an aerial view of our home. It's actually taken before we moved in, so obviously you can't see the solar. We've had the solar for a year, but I've done you a little diagram there of kind of what it looks like. So we've got a 12-panel landscape orientation array of solar panels. Made by ACO, and each panel is a 450-watt panel, and altogether combined that provides a sort of 5.4 kilowatt peak system, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. I'll just explain through the diagram rather than reading through the bullets. I'll kind of refer back and forth. So as you can see, got a nice glowing picture of the sun in the middle there, which that light energy hits those panels. And then that arrow that goes northwards to that red box is just showing that the energy from the panels goes into the inverter and then into the batteries. So that little red box that you can see, which is at the rear of the house, that's actually a ventilated shed that contains the inverter and these batteries. And the energy from those panels gone through the inverter and the batteries, it goes to power everything, including the air source heat pump. So we've got an arrow to demonstrate that little red box to the side of the shed that says ASHP, that's air source heat pump. And then if you look again at the panels and just slightly to the left of them, the consumer unit for the house, so the kind of the main switch of energy for the house is there. So it's actually quite far from the sort of brains and heart of the solar array, which is the inverter and the batteries, but it's all been really nicely, tightly, neatly tacked to the side of the house right at the bottom, and so that was done really well. And then just to say, we've got that EV charge point at the front of the house, which again is also powered by the solar. So just an overview, it is a south-facing array, or it's really southeast-facing, and that's quite evident here, really. It's a southeast-facing array, no shading, no obstructions, so it's kind of perfect, really, and it was a really strong roof, so it was just ideal. And for all of the kit that we installed last year, which was ready in literally the day before the longest day, so the day before summer solstice, it was all done and ready, and it cost just under £9,000. I chose Eden Solar partially because they had completed installations on a number of other roofs in my area. and that was great. And they were obviously very local to where I live. Well, not obviously, but I do live in the sort of in the Eden Valley. So next slide, please. Just a quick photograph really now of the actual panels themselves. So this was taken shortly after they were installed. The scaffolding's still there, as you can see in that photograph. It's a great spot. Next slide, please. So just wanted to show you what it looks like, the little ventilated shed that houses the inverter and 2 batteries. There's also a photo in the middle there that perhaps your eye's drawn to, which is a snap of our energy use from the 14th of May, which was last Wednesday in the morning, 9:35 a.m, when we were exporting energy, because of course we've had this glorious spring, extremely unusually dry and clear, bright spring, which has been fantastic for solar generation. Not so good, on the other hand, for our water levels of our reservoirs and for agriculture, but for solar generation, it's been extremely good. It's been really excellent. And just a few notes on what you can see in terms of the inverter and the batteries. The batteries that I've got, which are made by Fox S, are stackable. So if you buy a battery and you're not sure how much energy storage you need at the start, you can buy more later on. And of course, the software will update and upgrade, and the systems will move on, but they auto download the updates. And I'm fairly confident that if I wanted another battery this year, next year, I'd be able to add it to this existing system. So good to know. And in terms of the shed, on the right-hand side, really excellent little shed. It's kind of watertight against the wall, so it keeps all that equipment nice and dry. I give it a clean, give the kind of surface of the equipment a clean kind of once a year, really. And you can see it's got that kind of corrugated roof, so the water runs off it, and it does have that opening that's there all year round. You could have a cover, but I don't tend to find it's a problem. So it's worked out really well. Next slide, please. Okay, so on to that first sort of key question: how much energy can I generate? Next slide, please. So how much energy you can generate through your solar array, as we've discussed, Julia's mentioned this already, it's determined by your system's power and then the kind of constraints of the environment. So the aspect of your roof, if that's where you're placing your solar, and any shading or obstructions on the roof. So I'll now try to answer that question. What is kWp? kWp, kilowatt peak, is essentially a benchmark for comparing the performance of different solar panel models, different solar systems. It's basically the peak potential performance of that system if we were living in constant optimal conditions of bright, clear days all year round. So you can do a quick calculation, as I've written on the screen there, and you can work it out for whatever quote you get. Then you've got to think to yourself, okay, so that's ideal conditions, but so that won't necessarily be how much I generate. It's a little bit less, of course, because we live in a cloudy environment and not constant clear days. So my quote included an estimated annual energy generation figure. And as I've said, it's not the same as the kWp figure, because it's based on the realistic conditions in your specific location. So for me, my panels, 12 of them, each of them 450 watts, were estimated to produce just under 4,600 kilowatt hours of energy each year. So let's see, how well have they performed in the last almost 12 months? We're kind of 11 months down the line now since they were installed. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide here has two screenshots from the app that I use to monitor the energy that's being generated and being used through the solar. And they are showing how much solar was generated in 2024 and then again in 2025. And adding these two figures together is showing that we've almost generated in 11 months the total annual predicted figure. So I'd say that's a pretty good prediction. Yeah, well done. It's doing the job it's said it was going to. Next slide, please. So again, thinking about how much energy you can produce, as was indicated in Julia's slides, you do produce more energy on the brightest, longest days of the year. So my system was installed right at that time when you were bound to produce, as you know, a really good amount as long as you had clear days, and we did have really clear days. And on that first day of production, we produced 32 kilowatt hours, and that's pretty good going. I think that's quite a good figure. In terms of how much of it we used, I'll just explain this diagram a little bit. So there's a diagram at the top that says 16%, and then there's a little diagram below that says 98%. So the 16% is how much of the energy that we generated that day that we used. So we sent far more back to the grid than we used. However, of all the energy that we used that day, most of it was generated from the sun. 98% of the energy that we used that day came from the solar. So we were 98% self-sufficient. Unfortunately, we didn't get to receive payment for the energy that we sent back because we literally just had the system installed, and there is usually a bit of a delay. I think it's sort of around a month, maybe 6 weeks for the export tariff, which we'll talk a bit more about in the slides to come, to get set up and for you to be paid for the energy that you send back to the grid. But it is important to get that set up as soon as you can, or you'll be wasting, you'll not be being paid for the energy that you send back. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a little chart to show you how much energy we generated in each of the months since the solar has been in place. So as you can see, it kind of looks like a little hourglass. June 2024, the month that we installed the solar, is a bit of an anomaly because we only installed the system on the 20th. So the figures are lower than they would be had we had it installed for the full month. But July 24, we generated just over 600 kilowatt hours. And yet, if you look at the last bar for April 2025, just last month, we generated even more than that than in July. And yet, the days in April are shorter than they are in July. And that's because we've had our sunniest April on record. And perhaps it's also something to do with maybe, I don't know if we had temperatures hitting above 25 degrees that often in July and August, but I have heard that panels aren't as efficient when they're hitting temperatures above 25 degrees. So perhaps that might have played a part as well. But it's just an interesting illustration of the waxing and waning of the energy production throughout the year, following the amount of light that you have. So December last year, we just produced 72 kilowatt hours. So we were very heavily grid dependent that month, of course. Okay, next slide, please. So this little chart is also looking at months from the month that we installed the solar right up until April this year. And the blue bar shows you how much solar energy we produced each month. And the red bar shows for the same month how much of that energy we used. So as you can see, we always produced more energy than we could use. And However, it's interesting to see how in the colder months, the gap between the amount produced and the amount used closes, because you just need all the energy that you can get, really. Next slide, please. This now compares the percentage of the solar energy that we used with the percentage of the total energy that we use, so including the grid energy. So the blue bar, for example, June 2024, the month that we installed the solar, again, a slightly skewed month really, because it was only installed on the 20th last year. 39% of the energy, 39% of the solar energy was used, whereas in terms of our self-sufficiency, we were 65% self-sufficient. So we used a high percentage of the solar energy that we generated, even though more of the energy we generated that month went to the grid. It's a little bit, I find it a little bit confusing to get my head around sometimes, but it's an interesting one to look at. So just to sort of reiterate, the self-sufficiency, not needing energy from the grid, it was lowest in December, because obviously you need energy from the grid then, but highest in June. So the lower the red bar, the more we had to rely on grid energy that month. And the higher the red bar, the less we used the grid energy, even if we didn't use a high percentage of the solar that we generated. Next slide, please. So the next question you might be thinking when you're considering getting solar is, how can you make the best use of the energy that you produce? So let's have a look at that in the next slide. So you perhaps want to be choosing your priority around whether you want to generate so much energy that you can become totally self-reliant, or whether you're really interested in perhaps the amount of money you can get paid for exporting energy, because we now have smart tariffs, which can mean that it can sometimes make more financial sense to export energy rather than always maximizing self-consumption. So an example to kind of bring that to life, the tariff that I'm on with Octopus, the energy supplier, is Intelligent Octopus Go. And through that, I can use energy for 7p a unit between the hours of 11:30 p.m. and 5:30 a.m. And then during the day it's about 30p a kilowatt hour. But I actually get paid 15p a kilowatt hour for sending energy back to the grid. So I get paid double the amount to send energy back than I actually have to pay for using energy at night. So whilst I could charge the car during the day using the solar, it's not only more convenient to charge it overnight, so it's ready in the day, it's also, it sort of makes sense financially as well. And the other thing to note is that when there's less energy coming through the panels in the wintertime, and when it's darker in those early hours of the morning when you're up and about and you're using energy, you can charge a battery with cheaper energy that's generated that you can draw in from the grid overnight for that lower cost, that 7p a kilowatt hour. So you can then use that in those first few dark hours of the morning instead of having to be reliant on the grid energy that can cost 30p a kilowatt hour. So you can make it work for you in the winter as well as the summertime. So just a note about the batteries, because that's another, it is quite a key component to making best use of the energy that you're producing, as I've just outlined. They are kind of comparatively expensive to solar panels, but they just enable you to make much more use of the energy that you produce. And it is worth noting that if you don't have a good aspect for solar, or your roof is really old and you maybe don't want to think about solar on the roof, or you don't want to get a ground array, whatever reason, some people are buying solar batteries to be able to store the energy and use the energy and make use of this cleaner, greener energy without even needing to generate their own, because they can draw it in from the grid. So that wind energy, perhaps. So just something else to think about. Next slide, please. So these are some more screenshots from this time a different app. So the screenshots you saw before were from the app for my solar system, whereas this is from the Octopus app, and it's essentially just showing you the costs. So the amount, so on that first middle image there, that's essentially how much I get paid per kilowatt hour for exporting energy. And on the right-hand side, that is how much I pay for receiving grid energy. It's basically outlining what I was telling you before about the costs during the day being about 30p and at night only being 7p. And I think the little NB that I've got there on the slide is just reinforcing that comment that I made earlier, in that there is a bit of a delay between getting your solar installed and getting paid for export. Even if you submit all the paperwork, it just does take a small amount of time. And you really do need to make sure that you get your smart meter, because that is the most effective way of being able to access the export tariff. Next slide, please. So key question as well, how much will you save on your bills, which will lead you to work out how long it'll take you to pay back the system. So let's dive into this. Thank you. So I just did a little comparison of the months that I've had the solar, the sort of full months that I've had the solar, and the data for the cost of my bills, with comparable months of the year before having solar. So there's 9 sets of months compared here, and where you see those circles highlighting 4 sets of months, so that's September in 23 and 24, October in 23 and 24, January and March again, so January 24 and January 25, March 24 and March 25. Those are the months where we saw the biggest savings, and we even saved almost £100 in March. The saving was that big. Overall in a year, we're sort of in line, even though we haven't quite had it for a year, we're in line to be saving about £1,000, because for bills, we've saved almost £500 in total so far. So it's about 40%, almost 40% average decrease. We've made nearly £300 in export income. So in a whole 12 months, it's looking to be about £1,000, which actually I think it's going to be less than 10 to 12 years to pay off. It's going to be more like 9 years or 10 years, given how much it cost us. So yeah, it's doing well. Next slide, please. So just sort of coming towards a bit of a summary, really. A tip, number 1 tip, think about whether your priority is to have your system working in a power cut. Obviously, the more rural an area you live in, the more likely you might want that to be the case, and get that quoted in for you if you do, because certain systems are optimal for enabling this. Others, such as mine, they can be made to work in the event of a power cut, but I would need some additional work done by an electrician to kind of make that happen retrospectively, because they're not automatically going to work. So for example, if I get a power cut now, the batteries won't be powering the house. The energy from the batteries won't be going into the house. Tip number 2, I know smart meters aren't smart for everyone, but if they are working in your area, it's really important to get one if you're getting solar, because it does make it an awful lot easier for getting paid for exported energy. And I think a lot of suppliers you won't be able to access the tariffs if you've not got that smart meter. And you tend to also be able to access the best smart tariffs for export with the same supplier that you're importing energy from. So you might want to change who your supplier is for, for buying energy in. Have a look around. We've got a link that we could share with you about that. Apply for your export meter. So you won't have the facility to export energy straight away just because you've got a smart meter. You'll probably have to have that set up as well, and you'll only be able to do that once you've got your MCS certificate, which is what you get to certify the work when it's been done. So just get on with that as soon as you can to minimize the time and the money wasted. And finally, just think carefully about where to put your batteries. I think it's I originally thought that I could put them in the loft, and then delved into it a bit further and realized that might not be such a good idea. And actually now the recommendations, the best practice recommendations, are to have them either in the garage or outside. But as you can see, I have that nifty little shed that houses mine from the elements, and they are self-temperature regulating to a degree as well. So that really helps. Final slide, just a few closing comments. Essentially, I went ahead and bought a solar system partly because it just seemed almost like a no-brainer. I had the money available to do it, but I also had the ideal house for it. And being an all-electrical house, it just seemed to make perfect sense. It's worked brilliantly, and it has been reducing our costs and will pay itself back in the time frame or less than is average. If you don't have a strong roof and you need planning permission, or you don't have the money, there are other options available. There's more and more kind of finance options coming available. We don't endorse any of those options, but it is something that you can look at. And again, we did outline grants available as well, which you'll get when you receive the slides. Ground solar is another option if your roof isn't an option. And also battery only is another way to get on board. So yeah, just kind of concluding really, I can understand if it's not everyone's first priority to spend their savings on, but it can be a really worthwhile investment, and do just take time working out what you most want from it. And good luck. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Claire. A really fantastic insight to a lived experience in solar panels up in the sort of like the North Lakes, just out of Penrith, working with one of our 4 installers, Eden Solar. And thank you to Keir and Stuart, because you have been answering questions that have been coming in. So we had a question from Ian around could solar PV be combined with small wind turbines so that you can get power in the winter? Thank you, Keir, for answering that question. And then we had Jennifer asking about, and I know you've been on one of our events before, asking about solar with an air source heat pump and a multi-fuel stove. And we were talking about that, ensuring that it can work during a power cut. So thank you again. I'm going to ask Keir and Stuart to sort of come off mute. We can keep the questions coming in the Q&A channel. But I'd just like, Keir, first of all, Glow Solar, if you could just do your 3-minute lift pitch of who you are, where you come from, what you do. And then we'll hand over to Stuart and we'll keep the questions coming.
So I'm based in Levens, just south of Kendal, and we install solar, battery storage, car chargers. I've been doing it since 2010, so I've been around a long time. Glow Solar since 2016, and yeah, that's us really. That's what we do, and we work, throughout Cumbria, West Cumbria, southern Scotland, and North Lancashire.
Thank you so much, Kia. And I know we've done lots of different installations with you for domestic buildings, and also it was the village shop at.
Yeah, we've done that one at Levens. We've done
Yeah.
do commercial stuff, and we've done some off-grid stuff. You know, I've pretty much installed to absolutely everything at this point: churches, train stations. Yeah.
Thank you. And we did a ground panel one over at Ulverston, I think it was as well. Yeah.
It's getting more popular. The ground mounted ones getting more popular because obviously easy to maintain. You know, there's the planning considerations for ground mount. You've got to have planning permission for ground mounted systems, but they're so easy to maintain, and you know, the systems where actually they're quite easy to take them with you if you move house as well. For example, you know, it's just like a weighted down cheese wedge with a panel strapped to it, and you know, there's a very basic system, and you can just take them with you when you go. So yeah, ground mount becoming very popular now.
And thank you for that, Kia, because a lot of people ask, does it increase the value of your house? And whilst there's a lot on social media that would suggest it does, there's no evidence from the Estate Agents Association to say that it increases the value of a house. But what they do say is that when somebody is coming to make a decision and they've got one with solar, one without, then it becomes an influencing factor.
I think it's down as well. A bit of that is, you know, it's still quite new tech. It's not really, I mean, it's been around way over a decade now, but it's kind of down to the estate agent as well to sell it as part of the pack, you know, because the reality is some of the systems that we put on now, you know, people have next to no bills on these systems, and they have full house backup, you know, and when they come to have their house sold, that's not really part of the sales pitch. So I think if you are having your, you know, property sold, I think you want to make it clear just how low your bills are in comparison to the house next door that, you know, that doesn't have solar. So yeah, it's a real boon really to any householder to be buying a house that, you know, has 6 kilowatts of panels and a backup battery system.
No, fair comment, Claire, because I mean, Claire's just illustrated in 9 months, it's been worth 700 quid in terms of savings and selling back to the grid. So fair comment in terms of.
I mean, beyond what Claire was saying, actually, the one other thing now, so apart from this, you know, beyond the smart tariffs where you can charge your battery on a cheap rate overnight and use that cheap rate power the next day to power your house. You know, my battery system, I have a Tesla Powerwall in the house. My battery system is actually controlled by Octopus. So, you know, they have full control of my battery and they charge it and discharge it when they want. And that's on a tariff called Intelligent Flux. And Octopus actually uses our battery system to deal with spikes in the grid, to deal with like fluctuations in frequencies. They call it demand side response. And, you know, we're paid 28p a kilowatt hour for every kilowatt hour is discharged out of our battery. You know, at the minute there's only a few brands of battery that work on intelligent flux. Tesla, Give Energy, I think Enphase and SolarEdge work on that as well. But you know, when I look on my Tesla app, you can see 4 o'clock every afternoon, the battery discharges itself into the grid along with 650 other batteries. You know, there's over 2 megawatts of power going into the grid to deal with everybody coming home from work. And you paid a premium for that. So, you know, that's at the minute the best deal, really. And the best thing to be able to do with your battery is be on that plan.
Hey, thank you for giving us an insight. And yeah, it'll be the likes of me. Mind you, I don't come home because I'm working from home, but it'll be me putting on something on my electricity. Stuart, can I ask you to sort of like give a little bit of an overview of Create and how we've been working with you and some of your experiences and top tips?
Hi, yeah, we're based in Kendal. We're all electricians before we even look at doing a solar or anything like that, because solar can put some additional strains on your existing electric, i.e. on a nice hot day like we've been having recently, you might be creating absolute maximum power for 12, 14 hours a day. So we look at the backside of the solar as well. So we make sure that your existing electrics are up to scratch. I think Kia touched on it, but the backup stuff as well is really good. I mean, we live out in Leesgill, which is not far from Kia and Levens, and the amount of power cuts we get is one a month at least. So we do the backup systems, and you wouldn't even know the power's gone off, apart from obviously your neighbour's lights and the street lights have gone off. So it's been becoming more prevalent to have this backup, and the inverters and the systems are allowing you to do that now. So rather than you can by all means just have a socket that'll come on, or now you can have your whole house that stays on within reason. And the reason for it, I think someone mentioned before that the DNO, the grid, the Electricity Northwest, are struggling to keep pace with everyone doing solar. And it's giving massive fluctuations in the grid system, which is just going to cause more and more power cuts and things. I think someone asked the question, you can only export 4 kilowatt. That varies from site to site. Recently we've had export up to 12 kilowatt, but then we've also had export maximum 4 kilowatt. So depending where you're at and what kind of, how dated the grid is, and it can vary. But it's always better off oversizing your system and limiting the export. So you could have 20 kilowatt of solar panels, but as long as you have a device on which will limit the export, you can use 16 kilowatts of that in your house and just export 4 kilowatt. So you'd fill your batteries up, you'd heat your hot water cylinder, charge your EV point, try and power your air source. And then another thing with the batteries as well, again, I think Kia mentioned it, they're great to take advantage of off-peak tariffs. So especially through the winter, because we tend to tell people to swap their settings on their inverter twice a year. So at the end of the autumn, if you like, you want to be charging, you want to be topping up your batteries at night on the cheap rate and using them the next day. And you come into spring, you don't want to be charging your batteries at night. You want to be just charging them off your solar. And then that's the most efficient way of making it work in our view. But we can help you with that. And all the apps and settings and things that we use is just simple, very user friendly.
And thank you, because I know there was a question from Francis about what app would you recommend to show solar as the to make sure that it's the right app, and is it difficult to set up? We'll make sure that all of these FAQs are issued after today. A couple of people have asked how do we get in contact with our local vetted installers. I'm going to ask Claire to put a link to our property questionnaire in the chat line. We appreciate, of course, you could go direct to Kia and Stuart, but we would really value if you would complete our property questionnaire so that we can help you along the way. That's what we're funded to do. We will pass them on to Stuart and Kia. But of course, if you do go direct, we'll just ask Stuart and Kia to let us know so that we can track what impact we're making and what difference we're making. So that was just a bit of a plea of saying whether we've had people, when we were up at Carlisle the other week, somebody was asking, can I just buy a battery from you guys? And we said, absolutely. But nonetheless, I know that Glow Solar and Korea Energy would still check that everything is right for whatever you're choosing to do. And I know you guys have talked about electricity, but you would also be checking the roof in terms of, is it strong enough And are there any roof repairs which would be VAT free if it's done at the same time as solar installation? I know we have got literally, I think, 3 minutes left. Thank you, Claire. I'm just checking to see if there are any other questions that haven't been answered in the Q&A. And thank you. I think they have all been answered. I know that Jane is going to launch some poll questions at the end to see whether this evening has been valuable, but are there any last words of wisdom from Kia and then from Stuart?
I think the thing to do is just get us around, get us both over, and have a chat with us, and we can go through in a lot more detail than we've been able to on here, and answer any further questions that you might have. So yeah, look forward to meeting you.
Thank you. And I'll come to the last question we've just had. No, they're zero VAT for installations, batteries, roof repairs all at the same time. There's no news that that's going to finish. So if the government announces, we'll know, but at the moment, no news that it's going to come to an end. Stuart, your final words of wisdom.
Yeah, just get in touch with Futureproof, and they'll pass everything on to us. And we'll come out. We'll give you advice. We're not going to sell you something that doesn't work, because we're not allowed, for one thing. And we'll also look at everything else. Your hot water, your heating, anything that can save you energy and works hand in hand with the solar.
Thank you so much, guys, for being here this evening. I know behind every good man, there are some other people back at the business that are supporting all the work that you do. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Claire, for providing a really in-depth oversight of lived experience of working with solar and other renewable energies. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand back to Jane. It's been a lovely evening. I hope you found this useful, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Yeah, just a big thank you. I just want to reiterate what Julia has said. Yeah, big thank you to Claire and Stuart and Kia and Julia, of course. It's been fascinating this evening, and I'd just like to thank Robin as well in the background, doing our IT and making things work seamlessly.